Okay, wow. This case, the case of Sarah Mitchell, you've given us a lot to unpack here. I have to admit, it's already giving me chills.
Hmm.
This story, it really hits home for so many people. A seemingly perfect life, a promising future, and then vanished.
Yeah. And what strikes me right away is how this case, it perfectly illustrates the dark side of our digital world. Online manipulation is something we hear about more and more these days, but Sarah's story really brings it into sharp focus. It could happen to anyone.
Right. I mean, when you look at Sarah's life on the surface, Dean's List at Boulder, double majoring in psychology and criminal justice, active in her community. I mean, she had it all, didn't she?
From the outside, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the digital trail that she left behind, it tells a different story. It's like she was leading a double life, and that's one of the first things I want us to unpack. Think about, your own online persona, how you present yourself to the world. It's a curated version of ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, it is. We share the highlights, the good times, the perfectly filtered photos. We don't often show the late night worries or the struggles we're facing offline.
Exactly. And that gap between the online persona and the real person, that can be a breeding ground for manipulation.
Yeah.
Predators can easily exploit that. They look for inconsistencies, vulnerabilities they can latch onto. In Sarah's case, it was the late night texting, the sleep disruptions, her withdrawing from real life interactions. And then there were these cryptic social media posts. Those were the first cracks in the facade.
So someone was paying attention to these cracks.
Right.
And that's where James Morrison enters the picture. This is where my stomach starts to drop knowing what we know now.
Yeah. James Morrison is a classic example of a meticulously crafted fake persona. He was a ghost in the machine, created solely to manipulate Sarah. He claimed to be a graduate student at CU Denver, conveniently sharing interests with her. He showered her with flattery, isolating her from her support system bit by bit.
Hold on. How did he isolate her from her friends and family? I mean, she was seeing a therapist, right?
Oh, yeah, he would subtly plant seeds of doubt, maybe point out a supposed flaw in a friend's behavior or, question her family's motives, always subtly reinforcing the idea that he was the only one who truly understood her. It's classic manipulation tactics to erode her trust in everyone but him.
It's so insidious. I mean, how can you defend yourself against that? It's like emotional quicksand.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. These manipulators, they prey on our very human desires, the need for connection, the longing to be understood, and then they just twist those desires against us.
And in Sarah's case, this James character started demanding constant communication. If she didn't respond immediately, he'd guilt trip her or even weave details from her real life into threats. I mean, that's terrifying.
The level of control he exerted is chilling. He'd disappear for hours, sometimes days, and then reappear with these elaborate excuses, making her feel guilty for doubting him.
It's almost like he was testing her, pushing her boundaries to see how far he could go.
And tragically, Sarah, a criminal justice student, was still caught in his web. It's a stark reminder that manipulation, it can happen to anyone, regardless of how smart or aware you think you are.
So all of this online interaction was building to a climax. October 15th, it seemed like an ordinary Saturday in Boulder, but let's talk about what happened that day.
That Saturday, it started like any other for Sarah. She had a study session planned with her roommate, Jessica, but she never made it.
Okay, so walk me through this. What happened?
Security footage shows Sarah ordering her usual an iced vanilla latte at the campus coffee shop before stepping outside to check her phone. Investigators believe that's when she received a text from James, urging her to meet him in person near the Boulder Creek path. And that's where things take a truly sinister turn.
Why there? I mean, was it significant somehow?
The location James chose, it wasn't random. It was secluded, partially hidden from view, with limited security cameras. This was, a premeditated meeting. And knowing what we know now about James and his manipulation, his intentions were anything but innocent.
Her phone records show she walked about a half mile down the path and then just stopped. What happened next?
Her phone stayed in that location for 7 minutes. Investigators believe that's when she met James face-to-face for the first time. And then her phone started moving again, but very rapidly, indicating she was in a vehicle heading north out of Boulder. The final ping came from near a highway intersection, and after that, silence.
So she's gone. What were the first steps the investigators took?
Initially, they treated it as, a missing persons case. Sarah's roommate, Jessica, she didn't realize anything was wrong until hours later, thinking Sarah had just gotten caught up with something else. Precious time was lost.
That must have been agonizing for her friends and family, not knowing what happened.
Absolutely. And then the discovery of Sarah's backpack near where her phone last pinged, it shifted everything. This wasn't just a young woman who decided to take off. Something was terribly wrong. The investigation kicked into high gear, and the tech team began diving deep into Sarah's digital footprint. That's when they had their first major breakthrough. They were able to recover her deleted messages.
What did those messages reveal?
They were a window into the manipulation James had inflicted on Sarah. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, revealing a horrifying truth. The recovered messages showed he had created multiple accounts, each with a slightly different persona, all designed to manipulate and gain Sarah's trust. A web of deceit spun around her.
This wasn't just some random guy, was it? I mean, this level of planning, it's chilling.
Exactly. It was calculated, deliberate. And through meticulous digital forensics, they were able to trace the IP addresses from these fake accounts to various coffee shops in Denver, all within a specific 3-mile radius. At first, it seemed like a dead end. But then they discovered that all these coffee shops were clustered around Wallace Community College. And, guess what? James, our suspect, Michael Reeves, worked there as an IT administrator.
Wait, so this mastermind manipulator, this James Morrison, was the college IT guy.
That's right. He was hiding in plain sight, using his technical knowledge to create this elaborate facade.
But how did they finally catch him?
He used the college's VPN to mask his online activity, which was clever, but he made one crucial mistake. He got cocky. He accessed Sarah's social media from his home network just once, late at night, about 2 weeks before she vanished. That single slip-up gave investigators the link they needed.
So even tech-savvy criminals make mistakes.
They do. And his arrogance led to his downfall. Once they had their suspect, they dug deeper into Michael Reeves. And what they found was a pattern of behavior. Creating fake online personas to contact young women, it was nothing new for him.
This wasn't his first time.
Sadly, no. And when they searched his house, they found Sarah's phone hidden in his garage. He had tried to wipe it clean, but thankfully, the tech team was able to recover some data. Think about that for a second. You think you've deleted something, but it can come back to haunt you.
That's a good reminder for all of us to be careful about our digital footprint.
Absolutely. And the recovered data led them to a horrifying discovery. Location information pointed to an abandoned property in rural Boulder County. That's where they found Sarah's remains, carefully hidden.
So not only was he manipulating and stalking her online, he was physically following her too.
Yes. There were photos on his phone of Sarah going about her daily life, walking to class, studying at the library, completely unaware she was being watched. And they found detailed maps of the Boulder Creek path, marking isolated areas and blind spots in the security camera coverage.
This was all meticulously planned. He knew what he was doing every step of the way.
And to make matters worse, when they arrested him, he was already creating a new fake profile to target other students. This was a predator through and through.
It's heartbreaking. Sarah had so much potential, and it was stolen from her by this monster.
The evidence against Michael Reeves was overwhelming. Digital forensics, physical evidence, the discovery of Sarah's remains. The prosecution had built an airtight case.
It's just so disturbing to think about. Someone building this facade online, manipulating a young woman, and then taking her life. What happened at the trial?
The trial started in March of 2024. The prosecution presented a clear timeline of Michael's activities, showing the jury how he had manipulated and stalked Sarah for months leading up to the murder. They used actual screenshots of the messages, to illustrate the depth of the manipulation.
So the jury, they actually saw the conversations. That must have been powerful.
It was. The defense tried to argue that the messages showed a consensual relationship, but the forensic evidence completely debunked that. This wasn't, a love story gone wrong. This was coercion and control from the very beginning.
What was the verdict?
After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Michael Reeves guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, stalking, and criminal use of a computer. He received life in prison without parole, plus an additional 50 years for the stalking and cybercrimes.
Wow. That seems like the only just outcome, given everything we've learned.
The judge specifically cited the premeditation, the sophisticated deception he used. This wasn't a crime of passion, but a cold and calculated act of violence.
As we unpack all of this, what are some key takeaways for our listener? What can we learn from Sarah's tragedy?
Sarah's case is a stark reminder that online manipulation can happen to anyone. No matter how smart, savvy, or well-supported you are, it's so easy to think, that would never happen to me. But the truth is, these predators, they're masters of deception. They know how to exploit vulnerabilities, how to play on our emotions.
So how do we protect ourselves? What are some red flags to watch out for?
Be cautious about sharing personal information online. The less a manipulator knows about you, the harder it is for them to craft a strategy to target you.
That makes sense. We're so used to sharing, everything on social media.
Right. And be wary of anyone who comes on too strong, too fast.
Sure.
That love bombing we talked about earlier, showering you with excessive attention and affection early on, that's a huge red flag.
It's almost like they're trying to create an addiction to their attention.
Exactly. And pay attention to how someone makes you feel. If you feel uncomfortable, pressured, controlled in an online interaction, trust your gut.
Hmm.
Disengage. Don't be afraid to block them or report them to the platform.
Yeah, your intuition is often trying to tell you something important.
And remember, if something feels wrong, you are not alone. Talk to a friend, a family member, a therapist. If you or someone you know is experiencing online manipulation, there are resources like the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
That's right. The National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-7233, and you can also text START to 88788.
Sarah's story is a tragedy, but it can also be a catalyst for change. By learning from her case, by raising awareness, and by supporting each other, we can create a safer online world for everyone.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Sarah's case, I want to leave you with this. Think about how you present yourself online. Are you sharing too much? Are there vulnerabilities you need to protect? And what steps can you take to make your online interactions safer and more positive? It's a digital world out there, and it's up to each of us to navigate it wisely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay safe, everyone.